Season 2.5 has been out for just 24 hours now, and this video is a yapping style of video, by the way, just to kind of talk about my previous video that I made about these three heroes. And this is to say that boy was I wrong about what's happening with these three heroes, man. Right, so first of all, I do want to mention that when you have early access to a game, it's a bit weird. You don't get the full understanding of how they're actually going to play. And I do want to get onto a few weird things that they've done since then, and we're going to discuss that as we go through the heroes. But let's start off with Thor first, because we started off with Thor in our previous video. And I do play a lot of tank, by the way, so Thor is someone that I do have a lot of game time with, and I actually really enjoy playing Thor. What I said in my previous video is that they changed his playstyle, and that is going to make the hero a bit more boring. I did state that survivability was reduced, and obviously that is still the case. He's not going to survive nearly as long as he did before, especially stacking up the shields. And that's still the case, but you could still survive if you're a very skilled Thor player, right? So you can still do well, and that is evident after I played a couple of games of Thor. Now, I'm not the best Thor player in the world, obviously, but I do play this guy enough to get good value from him in ranked, so I do know how he works for the most part. What I was talking about is the fact that they changed his playstyle, whereas now he's more of an Awakening Rune merchant style hero. And that is fine if you don't mind playing that way. He's still pretty powerful by playing that method of Thor. It's just that I said that the playstyle of kind of what he was previously, which was more of a brawl tank, has changed, right? So mainly Thor in general, his playstyle has changed. Not the fact that he's weaker, it's the fact that his playstyle itself has changed. He's still relatively strong, he's still a pretty decent hero, and obviously we'll adjust our tier list accordingly as we kind of get a bit better understanding of where the meta sits in the next couple of weeks. Obviously our tier list videos are also very early predictions as well, by the way, based off of the early access too. However, like I said, Thor right now, he sits in a good spot. I think he's a pretty solid hero still, and even after all these changes and after my video that I made, I think he's actually a solid pick for this season 2.5. Is he going to be the best tank? I still don't think so. I still think Thor is not going to be anywhere close to what the best tanks are, but he's definitely 100% playable, right? You're going to be able to play Thor without a problem. If you mained him before, you can still play him now. It's just that you need to adjust your playstyle slightly according to these new changes, which, to be fair, make him a bit more boring. But if you do like playing Thor and you don't mind boring, then obviously you can still continue to play Thor anyway. Moving on into the hero that caused the biggest upset now, and that was Jeff. Now, Jeff got a lot of changes, and the changes that he did get, and I did state this in the previous video, made him a better support player or a better healer or whatever you want to call it, right? He's better at healing now, and people were saying that he's not better at healing, and I don't know what game you're playing, but right now, Jeff is actually a pretty solid healer right now. His bubbles deal more healing over time, obviously, but the impact healing has been taken away now. Now, that doesn't really matter because the actual number behind the healing is higher, right? So if you stay on Jeff's bubble and you get the healing over time, you're going to get healed up more than you did by one bubble before. So basically, the way the maths works is that essentially one of his bubbles now grants slightly more healing than two of his bubbles did before. However, it's healing over time and not impact healing. People do prefer impact healing because it allows you to get back into the fight a lot quicker. And if you're taking damage at the same time as healing over time, it almost feels like no healing at all, right, in that case. So that's why people prefer impact healing more than healing over time. And that is why Mantis is not so popular in terms of the best strategist in the game, right? However, obviously Jeff has his primary as well, so he's not like Mantis. He does heal with his primary, and that also helps too. And then also the fact that his primary now deals damage, and one of the easiest damage dealing tools in the entire game now. It's ridiculously good. You can easily track targets with it. You can easily kill flyers with it as well. By the way, Jeff is one of the best anti-flyers when it comes to taking them out. Super easy. And that is what makes Jeff really good now. He's actually a lot easier to play than he was before. Before, you had to play him as a DPS Jeff because his healing output, as much as it was pretty decent, is not quite as strong as what it is now. But now he's absolutely ridiculously easy to play. The only issue I do still have with Jeff is the fact that you can't stay underground for either a longer period of time or an indefinite amount of time. Essentially, all they did really was take away the kind of flanking Jeff DPS from him and just made him a better support. And some players will like this change. I mean, I think the majority of players will actually like this change, to be honest. because most people are used to playing him the conventional way of sitting back and trying to deal healing to your teammates. And that is what the lower rank players want from Jeff, and that is why the majority of players are happy with this change. Whereas the kind of higher ranks, people try to min-max what you can get out of a hero and then realize that Jeff's actually not the best healer, but he is actually really good at DPSing and he has self-sustainability, and that is why people didn't like the way Jeff played before. But obviously higher ranks understood that you have to use him that way to get the most possible value out of this hero, and obviously he worked out as one of the best DPS in the game, and now he's no longer that. He's one of a decent strategist in this game. So like I said, good hero nonetheless. So Ultron was the one I got the most wrong, and I'll happily put my hands up and say that I was wrong here when it comes to how good Ultron is. He's actually like a kind of A tier strategist hero. I think he's pretty solid. Obviously he's that DPS hybrid like we mentioned before. We already knew that when we were coming into the launch of this hero. But when I say I'm wrong, I'm going to put a small asterisk next to that, because he's probably the most changed hero we've seen from a trailer to early access to launch. And I've only had early access recently, by the way, and when it comes to this, in the trailer, Ultron had 275 base HP. In early access, he had 250 base HP, and then his ultimate didn't do nearly as much damage as it does now after launch. So they actually changed his ultimate at launch compared to early access as well. So his ultimate does better damage, and also it requires less points or whatever it is to get your ultimate, so you're going to get it more often than what we got it in early access. So they've actually changed this hero in all 3 stages of the launch. So that's why I kind of have to put a small asterisk next to that, because those small changes they made, now he's actually a pretty solid hero. Now I wish I did more testing on Ultron in the early access, to be honest, because I think they also changed his shield ability where it's got a slightly larger radius now as well. I'm not 100% sure on that, or maybe I just didn't know how it worked before, but now it's got an 8 meter kind of spherical radius around it, and it does do a bit better when using it in game now. I don't know if that's just because we've got like the website now to refer to, and that tells you basically how each ability exactly works. Now, the way you want to play Ultron is very similar to the way you play Adam Warlock. Obviously he's a DPS strategist. Now the good thing about Ultron is that you kind of set his healing and forget about it, almost to an extent, right? So you can put it on a tank, and if you're playing near the tank, you're going to do really well because you're going to get constantly healed. He's going to get constantly healed, and any teammates around that area will be constantly healed as well. Now you need to stay within that radius, otherwise you will die. If you stay too far away from your team as a flyer hero, especially playing Ultron, you will die. 250 HP is nowhere near as good, and you don't have enough escape tools to survive a good dive hero or someone sniping you from super far ranges. So that's something you need to keep in mind. Play close to your team. What you want to do is also switch your drone constantly. You want to be switching onto people that are closer to you. That way it keeps you alive a lot longer. It is a selfish kind of playstyle, and obviously you can heal whoever is in that radius as well. But for the most part, if you're switching to anyone that is close to you, it keeps you alive a lot longer, right? So you are playing relatively selfishly there, which is something that you can do. And then obviously you're using his tools to escape, like the shield and stuff, and the shield you should kind of be spamming out constantly, especially if your teammates are in a fight already. Then you want to be giving them that overshield pretty much every time it comes off cooldown. That is the best way to use it, in my opinion. Now, having said all this, Ultron is a pretty solid hero. You can get some good healing numbers. You're not going to be saving your team in a really tough situation, so you need to have a strong support hero next to you as well. So maybe like an Invisible Woman, Luna Snow, someone who outputs tons of healing. If you have one of them on your team, then you can still do relatively well with Ultron. If they're keeping you alive, then you can kind of switch your healing around with the bots and stuff. But he is a pretty solid hero, and obviously you will definitely output good damage numbers. By the way, you'll get easy kills with Ultron. Not necessarily easy, but you will get a lot of kills with him. And that is the way you kind of want to play him. Now, he's a pretty solid pick right now. Obviously, I don't know if that's just because he's new. Once the meta settles, we might see him not be up there nearly as much. But he's definitely a lot better than what I thought he was going to be in early access. So I'm just happy enough with that alone, because I didn't want him to be trash at launch. But that is it. That is my thoughts and opinions on all these changes. I don't mind saying I'm wrong when I am wrong, but if you enjoyed this video and you learned something new, don't forget to subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.